What if the biggest mistake people over 50 are making is something as simple as what they're not putting on their plate? Not a medication, not a workout, not even genetics, but one everyday food that most people ignore. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you're not eating this regularly, you might be quietly increasing your risk of heart disease, diabetes, and even early death. Sounds dramatic? It's not. Because according to one of the largest nutrition analyses ever conducted, eating just a small daily portion of this food can reduce your risk of dying early by around 6%. And it's probably already in your kitchen. Beans, yes, beans. And before you dismiss this, because most people do, you need to hear this. The people who live the longest on this planet eat them almost every single day. So the real question is, why aren't we? Here's the problem. Most people don't suddenly get old. They decline slowly. Energy drops, blood sugar becomes unstable. Cholesterol rises, inflammation builds silently. And then one day, it shows up as a diagnosis. But here's what most people never get told. A large part of this process is not inevitable. It's nutritional, and that means it's changeable. Now here's where things get interesting. In 2023, a massive meta-analysis published in a major medical journal analyzed data from over 1.1 million people across multiple countries, and the finding was consistent. The more legumes people ate, the longer they lived. Specifically, every additional 50 grams per day, about a quarter cup of beans, was associated with roughly a 6% reduction in all-cause mortality. In simple terms, people who ate more beans died less often from major diseases. And this wasn't a small, short-term study. This was long-term, population-level data. Real people, real outcomes. But this wasn't the only evidence. Another large-scale study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that replacing animal protein with plant-based protein, especially from legumes, was linked to a significantly lower risk of death from heart disease. And here's the key point. It wasn't just about removing something bad. It was about adding something powerful. But what researchers discovered next might be even more compelling. Because when scientists studied the longest living populations in the world, often called the blue zones, they found a pattern that showed up every single time. In places like Icaria in Greece, Okinawa in Japan, and Sardinia in Italy. People weren't following complicated diets. They were eating simple, traditional foods. And at the center of those diets, legumes. According to research led by Dan Bietner and published through National Geographic, the average intake in these populations is about 1 cup of beans per day. Every day. And these are the populations with the highest rates of people living into their 90s and beyond. So what makes beans so powerful? Let's break it down. First, your heart. After 50, your cardiovascular system faces increasing pressure. Cholesterol rises. Arteries stiffen. Blood pressure increases. But here's the surprising part. If you're enjoying the content and want more videos like this, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. A meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal found that regular consumption of legumes significantly reduces LDL cholesterol, the type most strongly linked to heart disease. Why? Because legumes are rich in soluble fiber. And this fiber acts like a sponge, binding cholesterol and helping remove it from your body before it can cause damage. So instead of waiting for a problem, you're actively preventing it. But it doesn't stop there, because one of the biggest hidden issues after 50 is blood sugar instability. That fatigue, that brain fog, that stubborn weight gain. And this is where legumes do something remarkable. A major global study, the PURE study, published in The Lancet and involving over 135,000 people in 18 countries, found that higher intake of legumes was associated with lower rates of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular mortality. And the reason is simple. Legumes digest slowly. They release glucose gradually. They stabilize your energy instead of spiking it. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because the real impact might be happening in your gut. Research published in Cell Host and Microbe has shown that gut microbiome diversity is one of the strongest predictors of healthy aging. And legumes? They are one of the most powerful prebiotic foods available. They feed beneficial bacteria. They strengthen your immune system. They support brain health. So every time you eat beans, you're feeding the system that protects you. And then there's inflammation, the silent driver of aging. A number of studies from Harvard researchers using dietary inflammation indexes have consistently shown that diets rich in legumes are associated with lower levels of chronic inflammation. And that matters, because inflammation is linked to almost every major disease of aging. Heart disease, cancer, cognitive decline. So reducing it changes everything. Now you might be thinking, I've tried beans, they don't agree with me. And that's completely valid. But here's what most people don't know. That problem is fixable. Soaking dried beans overnight removes most of the compounds that cause bloating. Rinsing canned beans does the same. And your body adapts. Start small. Give it a couple of weeks, and your gut adjusts. If you want the easiest place to start with red lentils. No soaking, fast cooking, easy digestion. Add them to soups. Mix them into sauces. Simple. So what's the target? Around half a cup to 1 cup per day. Or at least 4 to 5 times per week. That's the level consistently associated with real health benefits in the research. Because here's the truth. The people who age the best don't rely on complicated systems. They rely on simple habits, done consistently. And one of the most powerful habits across the longest living populations on Earth is eating legumes. So the next time you're deciding what to eat, remember this. Small choices, repeated daily, shape your future. Ignore them, and nothing seems to happen until it does. But use them, and you give your body something most people never do. A real advantage. And if you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe for more science-based videos on healthy aging and longevity. Because the truth is, most people are never taught how to age well. But once you understand what actually works, everything changes. And it starts with something as simple as what you put on your plate.